Hey everyone, this is Cullah Hale from Destination Thrills, and yes, I'm back with another tournament. It's back-to-back tournament result videos here, so I hope you're enjoying these right now. We will get to some other content in the future, but right now I have kind of backloaded on some of these tournaments, and I wanted to get these results out there for all of those who participated. So I'm so excited for this one. This is the first time I've done a tournament at a park that I have never been to. So typically I will pick either a park or a series of coasters to do a tournament on that I've been on a bunch of, so I kind of have an idea when I'm giving my analysis on which coaster is better in my opinion. But today it's going to be all coasters that I've never been on, minus Batman the Ride. I've been on a couple of clones of Batman the Ride, so I have a feel of what that coaster's like, but the rest of them I'm going in completely blind. So this will be a fun one to try and do an analysis on based on just what other people are saying, and I'm just really curious to see what your opinions were and which coaster you voted as the number one. And what I really like about this tournament is that this is the first one that doesn't have a clear number one. I feel like tournaments I've done in the past, you could kind of pick who the winner was going to be in the end from the beginning. But this one, I think there's two, maybe a third coaster that could win this one. So it's going to be a fight to the finish, and it's going to be very, very, very interesting to see which one gets chosen as the number one coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is definitely a bucket list park for me, and I'm excited to get there one day. All right, without further ado, let's get into the rules of this tournament. We had 16 coasters from Six Flags Magic Mountain going head to head. They had to be operating roller coasters, so they couldn't be any coasters from the past that have been defunct. Now, I did have the 4 kids coasters go head to head to see which one would end up making it into the bracket, and the winner of that ended up being Road Runner Express. So Road Runner Express took the last seed. This was a single elimination tournament, so again, once you lost, you were out of the running for the championship. I always do a consolation bracket for those who lose in the final 8, so whoever loses in the final 8 will then go into a consolation bracket that will determine 5th and 7th place. And then obviously the 2 coasters that lose in the semifinals will face off in a 3rd place matchup, and of course the one that goes all the way without losing to the championship will be battling it out for 1st place. And as always, the matchups were posted to my Instagram story, and whoever got the most votes was determined the winner and moved on to the next round. Here is a bracket that you see now on your screen, and we have X2 as the number 1 seed. Again, this was just by my personal opinion, the seeding here. Obviously, you will all prove me wrong if another coaster ends up winning, but in my opinion, X2 seems like it is the number 1 seed. And then I had Twisted Colossus on the bottom right of your screen as the number 2 seed. We had Tatsu then on the top right as your number 3, and finally Full Throttle as the number 4 seed. Then we also had West Coast Racers as the number 5 seed, Goliath as number 6, Apocalypse as number 7, and Superman Escape from Krypton as number 8. And then the rest of the coasters, I just tried to match them up with what made sense. Again, you don't want your best coasters going against each other in the first round because you want them to battle later on in the tournament for the championship. So I know I get a lot of questions on why certain coasters are getting unfair matchups, and that's just how it is in the first round in most tournaments and sports. And of course that applies here to the coaster tournaments. All right, so I think it's time to jump into these results, and I'm just so curious to see what you all chose as our winners here. So let's start out with the first matchup, X2 versus Road Runner Express. You know, congratulations to Road Runner Express for making it into the tournament, winning that 4-way battle, but unfortunately, I think this is where the road ends for Road Runner Express because it's going up against what I consider the number 1 seed, X2. X2 is going to go really far in this tournament. Yes, it does have its haters that say that it's too rough, but I think a majority of people really praise X2, and I really don't see it going down to a kids coaster here, obviously. So I think X2 is going to win this pretty handily, and it does with 91% of the vote. So I'm just curious about the 9% of people who prefer Roadrunner Express to X2. I'm just very curious about who those people are. Anyway, moving on to the next round, we have Batman the Ride versus Superman Escape from Krypton. Now, I did seed Superman Escape from Krypton as number 8. I guess Batman would technically have been your number 9 seed, so this should be a pretty close matchup. I could see why Batman might win this, just because it has more of a layout, it has more to the ride, whereas Superman Escape from Krypton is pretty much that fast accelerating launch in the beginning and then takes you up super, super high. I can see why people would get the thrill out of that as well, but I don't know. I'm not sure what I would personally choose if the rush that you get on that launch is really extreme, then I may like it better than Batman the Ride. But again, I have not ridden it yet, so I don't know if I like which one better. So let's see what you all chose, and Batman the Ride wins with 74% of the vote. So Batman moving on to the next round. All right, let's move on to the next battle here, and that's going to be West Coast Racers versus New Revolution. New Revolution is the classic looping coaster at the park versus the brand new West Coast Racers. Now, I think West Coast Racers, how it's going to do in the tournament is going to be dependent on how many people have had the chance to get out there and ride it. West Coast Racers did not open until the very ending of 2019, and then of course we had coronavirus happen in March, so really there hasn't been much of a window for people to ride this ride. So West Coast Racers is like that X factor. Is it going to get votes because people saw the POVs and thought it's going to be really awesome? Or did enough people get to ride it and get to judge it fairly on if they think it's better than certain coasters or if it's worse than certain coasters? But I think it's going to be really fun to see what West Coast Racers' role is in this tournament. Is it going to be a spoiler for some? I don't know. We'll see as we move on in the tournament. I think West Coast Racers, though, wins this just because it's the brand new toy at Magic Mountain. You know, I've heard good things about New Revolution, but West Coast Racers just has a lot more going on with it. Okay, and the winner of West Coast Racers versus New Revolution is West Coast Racers with 86% of the vote. So West Coast Racers moving on to the next round here. All right, next up we have Viper versus Full Throttle. I think Full Throttle is going to have a pretty easy time in this round. The only thing I could see Full Throttle having a problem with is the fact that it's not a very long coaster. It's got some really cool looking elements, like that slow loop looks like you have a lot of good hang time. And then of course that launch as well seems pretty fun. Premier Rides launches are usually pretty good, though again, I don't know what Full Throttle's launch is like, but if it's a good launch, I could see it really adding to that coaster. But that length might play a factor, and some of these longer coasters may end up taking it out. I don't think Viper's one of them, even though it seems like a pretty long coaster. I just don't think with its roughness that it's going to be able to beat out Full Throttle here. But let's see. The winner of this round is Full Throttle with 72% of the vote. So that's a pretty good sign for Full Throttle, even though I thought it was going to win against Viper. I think having a 72% win here is a pretty good sign for that coaster. So Full Throttle will end up facing off against West Coast Racers. So two Premier Rides launch coasters going head to head in the next round. That's going to be pretty interesting. All right, our next battle is going to be Tatsu versus Ninja, the suspended coaster. Suspended coasters I think are fun, but they're just not like the highlight to me, whereas like flying coasters, especially like B&M flyers, are crazy. I've been on Manta and I've been on Superman, and they are so much fun. Even though Superman doesn't have a huge layout, it still is a fun, enjoyable ride. And so Manta was absolutely insane, and Tatsu is supposed to be like the best of the best for flying coasters. So I really think Tatsu has a pretty good advantage in this tournament and could play spoiler to a coaster that's trying to win the championship. So we'll have to see how it plays out. I think Tatsu, though, moves on in this round, and it does. 92% of the vote. Not a surprise here. Tatsu moving on to the next round. All right, next up we have Riddler's Revenge versus Apocalypse. A lot of people DM'd me when I put this matchup up and said that they actually preferred Riddler's Revenge. So I was a little bit shocked. You know, I thought especially Apocalypse having that retracking was gaining so much more traction in the coaster community. So I figured Apocalypse actually might have been seated lower than what it should have been, but a lot of people said Riddler's Revenge is actually really good. So could Riddler's play spoiler here? We'll have to see. I mean, if I had to go with my preference, even though I haven't ridden both, I do typically prefer wooden coasters, especially GCIs, over B&M stand-up coasters. So I probably would go with Apocalypse here, but let's see who won. And it is Apocalypse with 60% of the vote, so actually a pretty tight battle here to start out with. Apocalypse, that might not be a good sign going into the next round when it has to face off against Tatsu. That might be a tough battle for Apocalypse. But anyway, let's move on to the next battle. And we have Goliath versus Scream. So Scream, known as the parking lot coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain. And then you have Goliath. Goliath, I've been on Titan at Six Flags Over Texas, and I'm not sure if I would prefer it to a floorless coaster or not. The only floorless coasters I've been on is Rougarou at Cedar Point and Kraken at SeaWorld Orlando. So this would be a tough one. I think I'd probably prefer the floorless, but I'm not sure about this one. I think Goliath probably has the upper hand here, but let's see who wins. And the winner is Goliath with 65% of the vote, taking out Scream. All right, our final battle of the first round is Gold Rusher versus Twisted Colossus. So we have a Mine Train Coaster versus a RMC hybrid dueling. Yeah, I think Twisted Colossus is going to win this one, and Twisted Colossus could be the other coaster to possibly compete with X2 for the #1 at the park. We'll have to keep an eye on it, but yeah, Twisted Colossus, I think, wins here, and it does with 94% of the vote. So that is our first round, and now let's move to the second round results, our final 8 coasters here. Our first matchup is X2 versus Batman the Ride, and again, I think X2 is going to go pretty far here, so I would probably favor X2 in this matchup. The only chance that Batman has is that maybe there are people that don't like the roughness of X2 and find Batman to be way more smooth and enjoyable, so that would be the only window of opportunity, but I think X2 wins this one. And let's see the results. X2 wins with 89% of the vote, so another big victory for X2 here, and it will move on to the semifinals. Joining X2, we have West Coast Racers versus Full Throttle, the two Premier Rides coasters going head-to-head. I think West Coast Racer has the advantage, even though probably most of the people that voted in this tournament have not ridden it yet. I think West Coast Racers has the advantage just because it's the brand new thing. It has a longer layout, and it's dueling, and it just looks like it has more to it, whereas Full Throttle looks much more grand. It's doing the elements on a more grand scale, but there's less of the layout. So I think West Coast Racers has the advantage, and the winner is West Coast Racers with 65% of the vote, so a pretty big win there for West Coast Racers, and it will move on to the semifinals. All right, our next matchup is Tatsu versus Apocalypse. This one will be determined by how many wooden coaster fans are in this tournament and how many of those wooden coaster fans prefer wooden coasters over one of the best flying coasters in the world. Tatsu, I think, has the advantage just because of its clout. So even the people that haven't been to Six Flags Magic Mountain will probably vote Tatsu here. And I'm not sure the percentage of voters who have actually been to Six Flags Magic Mountain versus ones that are just participating, which I always encourage, even though you haven't been on the ride, to participate because it just makes it fun. And I think just because of the clout that Tatsu has, it's going to probably do well here. So let's see which coaster wins, and it's Tatsu with 84%, so no surprise there. Moving on to the final 4. And joining it, we have Goliath versus Twisted Colossus. Twisted Colossus, the RMC. Everyone's on that RMC hype train. I just don't see it losing to Goliath here. So let's see who wins this matchup. And we have Twisted Colossus with 89% of the vote. So Twisted Colossus, another big win. And it's moving on to the final 4 to face off against Tatsu. That will be an interesting matchup. Will Tatsu play spoiler here? We'll have to find out. So let's go on. We have the consolation bracket, and the matchups we have here are going to be on the left side, Batman the Ride versus Full Throttle, and Apocalypse versus Goliath. And then in our semifinal, we have X2 versus West Coast Racers, and again, like I mentioned, Tatsu versus Twisted Colossus. Let's start out with the consolation bracket. Our first matchup here, the Batman the Ride versus Full Throttle. I think Batman the Ride has the advantage here. I don't know. I think because it has so much to the layout that it's going to do better. And I think there's a lot of people that, bash Batman the Ride as being one of the worst inverts, but lately I've seen its popularity grow. In my opinion, it's one of my favorite inverts. And I've been on Banshee, Montu, Raptor. Batman the Ride might be one of my favorites. I just like its compact layout. And so because of that, I think it has a chance here to win this battle. So let's see who wins. And it's going to be Full Throttle with 66% of the vote. So people chose Full Throttle as being the better coaster, and it's going to be in our 5th place matchup. Batman the Ride will be featured in our 7th place battle. All right, our next consolation bracket is Apocalypse versus Goliath, and I think Apocalypse will have the advantage here, though I expected Apocalypse to do a little bit better than it did. So I'm not sure. It's going to be I think it's going to be a close one, but I don't know. It's tough, but I think Apocalypse probably edges out Goliath here. All right, and the winner is Apocalypse with 65% of the vote, so a 2/3 victory here. And moving on to the 5th place battle, so it'll be Goliath versus Batman for 7th place, and Full Throttle versus Apocalypse for 5th. All right, our next matchup now in the semifinals, X2 versus West Coast Racers. this will be the big test for West Coast Racers on if it has a chance of even winning this tournament. I don't think it does, but you know, people surprise me all the time, and because it's so new, it's the name that everyone kind of knows right now because it's been, you know, it's the more recent coaster edition. It may have a chance here. I think X2 though wins this matchup. Again, I picked as the #1 seed, so of course I'm going to say that, but yeah, let's see if X2 wins. And X2 does take out West Coast Racer with 82% of the vote, so a huge victory here. And I think that might be some indication on how X2 plays out in the championship. I don't know, we'll have to see, but that's a pretty big margin of victory here for a pretty good coaster in West Coast Racers. So West Coast Racers will be moving on to third place battle, and X2 will be in the first place matchup, and joining it will either be Tatsu or Twisted Colossus. This might be the tighter battle of the day. Tatsu, Flying Coaster, Twisted Colossus, the dueling RMC. Ever since it's come out, Twisted Colossus has had such a big rave behind it. Some even think it's a top tier RMC. Again, I can't judge it because I've never been on it, but from the looks of it, it looks really cool. It looks like it's got some pretty sick elements, and when it does duel, I mean, that looks to be so much fun. I'm really looking forward to that coaster. It might be my #1 bucket list coaster at that park. But again, Tatsu, I mean, we shouldn't sleep on this coaster. Again, most people think this is one of the top flying coasters in the world, and a lot of people say that that pretzel loop is one of the best elements on a B&M coaster. So Tatsu definitely has a chance, but will Twisted Colossus' name sort of override it? I don't know, we'll see here. The winner of Tatsu versus Twisted Colossus is Twisted Colossus with 70% of the vote. So the victory is not as clear as it was with X2 over West Coast Racers. However, I think Tatsu is probably the better coaster there. I guess we'll find out in our third place matchup, as that's where Tatsu will be. But yeah, we're gonna have Twisted Colossus versus X2. This is kind of what I expected from the beginning here. These two are the premier coasters at the park, and it's gonna be one heck of a championship. I'm excited to see these results here. We'll get to them in just a moment. But first, let's get to our 7th place matchup, which is Batman the Ride versus Goliath. Now, I was wrong about Batman the Ride taking out Full Throttle, and so my confidence in it winning now is a little bit less than it was before. Personally, I think Batman the Ride is better than Goliath. I haven't been on Goliath, but being on Titan, I think it's similar enough to where I can compare here, and I know that I like Batman the Ride a lot more than Titan. So I have a feeling I'd probably like Batman the Ride over Goliath, but I don't know how the voters are gonna go here. This is gonna be a tough one. I haven't seen his results yet, so I'm gonna take my guess that Goliath wins just because of earlier voting, but let's see who won, and it is Batman the Ride with 60% of the vote. So not a huge margin, but a convincing win for Batman the Ride here, and Batman the Ride gets 7th place. Moving on to our 5th place matchup, we have Full Throttle versus Apocalypse. Now, again, I thought Apocalypse was going to be doing a little bit better, but also I had Full Throttle as a 4 seed, and it's down here in the consolation bracket. So a lot of surprises for me in that regard. But I think Full Throttle probably still has the advantage just because it has a lot more going to it, and it's a launch coaster as well, which I think adds an extra thrill. Though Apocalypse, it looks like a good ride to me, and I think that's a coaster that I will probably really enjoy and probably have ranked high at Magic Mountain when I finally go there, but I don't know. Let's see what the voters chose, and for 5th place, we have Full Throttle with 59% of the vote here. So Full Throttle gets 5th place. Apocalypse will settle for 6th. All right, we have West Coast Racers versus Tatsu. West Coast Racers has gone really far in this tournament, farther than I thought it was when I was putting this tournament together, so that was kind of the surprise for me. Tatsu, though, no surprises here in the top, going for 3rd place, and I really think it's going to win this 3rd place matchup. But let's see. I mean, West Coast Racers, again, has surprised me so far. It could surprise again. And the winner is, of 3rd place, Tatsu with 73% of the vote, so a very convincing win for Tatsu, and Tatsu will take on 3rd place. So now it is time for our championship, and I have no clue who's gonna win this. I seeded X2, so I'm going to pick X2, but I can say I took a sneak peek at the voting halfway through, and this match was within 4 percentage points, so this could have swung either way. I don't know who's gonna win. This is very exciting for me. For me personally, it's hard to judge because I've never been on a multi-dimensional coaster the scale of X2, and so what I've heard is that it is a pretty crazy ride, and I have a feeling I am going to really like it unless it is too rough. That may take some points off of it. I already know I really enjoy RMCs. There hasn't been an RMC that I've been on that I did not like, so I would be very shocked if I didn't like Twisted Colossus. So I think we should just reveal it here. Let's see who won between X2 and Twisted Colossus. The winner of the Six Flags Magic Mountain Tournament is Twisted Colossus with 51% of the votes, so just barely winning this matchup. Oh my goodness. The vote margin, it was 344 votes for X2 and 360 for Twisted Colossus. So just by 16 votes, Twisted Colossus wins this matchup. What a duel. This has to probably be one of the closest championships I've had in a tournament so far. Twisted Colossus beating X2. I would be excited to hold this tournament again next year and see if the result plays out the same. Who knows, maybe like 20 more X2 fans vote next time and X2 wins. I don't know. That's a pretty close margin. I would not say convincing at all. Those two are obviously the top coasters, but for today's tournament, Twisted Colossus wins, and wow, that was very, very exciting to see those results. And I just want to thank everybody for participating in this battle. We had a little over 700 participants. These keep on growing, and I'm so excited. So as always, like I say, tell your friends about these tournaments and check out our Instagram page. We post all of the tournaments and battles to my Instagram story. Plus, I reveal all the details of upcoming tournaments there as well. So you're definitely going to want to check out our Instagram page. I'll have a link in the description below. Also, we have our next tournament is already going here. So the next tournament is the B&M Inverted Tournament. Here is the bracket. This is going to be another good tournament, and I have no clue. This is probably the first time I have no clue who the front runner is going to be. I have a general idea of like maybe a top 5, and that's how I seeded them in this bracket here, but I think this one's anyone's race. So I'm excited to get into the B&M Invert Tournament. And if you're watching this video right when it's released, we probably have matchups going on right now, so you're going to want to head over to my Instagram page and vote in this tournament. And man, got some exciting stuff, and this isn't the only tournament happening this season. We have plenty more tournaments coming down the road, so stay tuned for that. Plus, I have other content coming that I promise that isn't tournament related, so maybe you're bored by these. Trust me, I have other content coming. So definitely want to subscribe to Destination Thrills, as we are the destination for all the latest roller coaster news, battles, and content. I'm Cullah Hale. Thank you so much for watching. Congratulations to Twisted Colossus for winning the Six Flags Magic Mountain Tournament. Everyone have a great day and stay safe. Have a good one.